Tyler and Cheryl Whitman were the kind of couple small-town legends are built around. High school sweethearts turned picture-perfect parents, respected by neighbors and admired in church pews. But when Cheryl discovered Tyler's secret affair, not with a coworker or a stranger, but with his own half-sister Lena, the illusion shattered. What began as betrayal spiraled into public disgrace, psychological collapse, and ultimately a brutal murder that stunned the quiet Alabama town of Pine Hollow, and left behind a trail of secrets darker than anyone could have imagined. Nestled deep in the wooded hills of Alabama sat the quiet town of Pine Hollow, a place where change came slowly and outsiders rarely stayed long. The streets were lined with aging oak trees, and the people lived predictable, peaceful lives. Among them were Tyler and Cheryl Whitman, a couple many in the community admired. They were high school sweethearts who had married young and seemed to grow stronger with every passing year. Tyler, tall and rugged, ran a small but successful construction company. Cheryl, with her warm smile and calm presence, worked as a substitute teacher at the local elementary school. Together they raised 2 children, kept an immaculate home, and attended church every Sunday without fail. To the world around them, the Whitmans had what many considered the perfect life. They lived in a modest 2-story house on the edge of town, with a sprawling backyard where the kids played, and where Cheryl planted a flower garden every spring. Photos of family vacations, church picnics, and school achievements filled the walls of their home. Tyler was known for offering neighbors help with home repairs, and Cheryl organized school fundraisers and Sunday school lessons. There were no public arguments, no visible cracks in their carefully crafted image. But Cheryl had begun to sense that something was off. At first it was subtle, just a shift in how Tyler looked at her, a distant tone in his voice when they spoke. He started working longer hours, taking jobs in nearby counties that kept him away from home well into the night. When Cheryl asked about his schedule, Tyler brushed her off with vague answers about delays and demanding clients. He was always tired, always distracted. His phone, once left carelessly on the kitchen counter, was now always in his pocket or locked in the truck. When he wasn't working, he was glued to the screen, typing out long messages with a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. At first, Cheryl blamed herself. Maybe she wasn't trying hard enough. Maybe they were just going through a rough patch. Marriage had its ups and downs after all. But no matter how much effort she put into reconnecting, through date nights, family dinners, and heartfelt notes left in his lunch bag, Tyler only grew colder. He avoided eye contact. He flinched when she touched him, and worst of all, he had started sleeping on the far edge of the bed, his body turned away from hers, as if he couldn't bear to share the same space. As weeks turned into months, Cheryl's worry turned into quiet panic. She tried to dismiss the thoughts swirling in her mind, but they wouldn't leave her alone. Something was deeply wrong. One rainy afternoon, while cleaning out the truck to surprise Tyler with a detail job, she opened the glove box and found a second cell phone, one she had never seen before. Her hands trembled as she powered it on. The wallpaper was a photo of 2 people, Tyler and a woman. The image was blurry but unmistakable. Tyler had his arms around her. The woman was not Cheryl. Messages flooded the screen. Cheryl didn't need to read many to understand what was going on. This wasn't just an affair. It was a full-blown relationship. Her heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to cry, scream, throw the phone. But instead she stood frozen in the driveway, rain beating down around her, staring at the device like it held the key to her unraveling world. In that moment, Cheryl realized the life she thought she had, the husband she believed in, the marriage she had fought to protect, was nothing more than a lie. But what she didn't know yet, what no one could have known, was that the woman on the other end of those messages wasn't just a mistress. She was family, and the truth waiting for Cheryl just beyond the edges of the screen was more disturbing than anything she could have imagined. The rain had stopped by the time Cheryl walked back into the house, but inside her a storm was only beginning. Her heart raced with confusion, disgust, and disbelief as she sat at the kitchen table with the second phone clutched tightly in her hand. She stared at the messages, reading them over and over, hoping, desperately praying, that she had misinterpreted something. But there was no doubt about it. The language was intimate. The photos were explicit. This wasn't just a fling or a mistake. It was a long-standing, deeply personal affair. And yet something still didn't add up. The woman's name was simply saved as L. Cheryl scrolled through the texts, trying to find more information, something that might give her a clue. Then she found it. A message that mentioned Dad and a conversation about keeping things quiet since the family never really cared anyway. It made Cheryl pause. Her stomach turned. She remembered something from years ago, something Tyler had told her back when they were newlyweds. His father had another child from a different relationship, a girl named Lena. They didn't grow up together, and Tyler had only met her a few times when they were teenagers. It had been a minor detail, easily forgotten. But now, Cheryl couldn't ignore it. Her mind scrambled to piece things together. Could it be her? Could L be Lena? The idea seemed too awful to be real, too twisted to be possible. But the more she thought about it, the more the pieces fell into place. Cheryl opened her laptop and began searching. She remembered Lena's last name and found her social media profile within minutes. The profile picture was unmistakable. It was the same woman from the wallpaper photo on the hidden phone. Lena, now in her early 30s, worked at a dental office 2 towns over. She posted frequently, and Cheryl quickly realized that several of the places Lena had recently visited matched up with the times Tyler claimed he was out working. There was a photo taken at a lake house Cheryl didn't recognize, but she did recognize the boat in the background. It belonged to one of Tyler's clients. With her heart pounding, Cheryl saved screenshots of everything: messages, photos, locations. She wasn't just confronting infidelity now. She was staring directly into a horrifying secret. Her husband was having an incestuous relationship with his own half-sister. The discovery shattered her. She couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she pictured Tyler's face, his laugh, his arms around their children, and behind that image she saw the betrayal, calculated, deliberate, and beyond comprehension. She wondered how long it had been going on. Was it a recent affair, or had they rekindled some forbidden bond from childhood? Was it possible their relationship had begun even before she married him? She scoured more messages and found references to picking up where we left off and finally being free to love each other again. That one sentence made Cheryl feel sick. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't something that just happened. It was something that had been waiting in the shadows, waiting to bloom in darkness. As the days passed, Cheryl's fear turned into quiet determination. She began gathering evidence, more screenshots, photos from Lena's public profile, and even location records pulled from Tyler's phone plan. She checked his truck's mileage and started writing everything down in a notebook, logging patterns and dates. She stopped talking to Tyler unless she had to, pretending to be distracted or tired. She played the role of the unaware wife, while secretly building her case. But it wasn't revenge Cheryl was after. It was protection. For her children, for herself. She didn't know how Tyler would react when the truth came to light, but something deep inside her whispered that he was capable of things she hadn't dared consider before. Something was changing in him. The man she once knew was slipping away, and in his place was someone she didn't recognize. Cheryl didn't know it yet, but the moment she discovered that phone, she had stepped into the first chapter of a nightmare she wouldn't wake up from. The whispers began slowly in Pine Hollow, like a wind moving through dry grass. Quiet at first, then building into something no one could ignore. It started when Lena stopped showing up at work. Her absence, paired with the sudden closure of her dental office's social media page, stirred rumors. A week later, a local church elder received a package with no return address, Inside were printed photos, screenshots of text messages, and a short, typed note. Similar packages landed in the mailboxes of the local sheriff, the school principal where Cheryl taught, and 2 pastors at Tyler's church. By the end of the week, the scandal had exploded across the county. People couldn't believe it. Tyler Whitman, the friendly contractor who helped rebuild the church roof last fall, the man who coached Little League and spoke about faith and family values, was involved in a sexual relationship with his half-sister. Worse still, it had apparently been going on for years, hidden beneath the surface like rot under fresh paint. Lena, once seen as quiet and unassuming, was now the center of an unspeakable storm. Her face vanished from local Facebook groups. Friends unfriended her, co-workers stopped answering her calls. One of her neighbors posted a message online saying, "There's no place for people like that here." It was short, brutal, and echoed the town's sentiment. Tyler didn't deny anything. He disappeared for 2 days after the scandal broke, staying in a motel outside of town. When he finally returned home, Cheryl had already changed the locks and filed for an emergency protection order. She took the kids and moved in with her sister 3 hours away. The home they had built together, the one that held their wedding photos, their children's first steps, and all their holiday traditions, was now just a shell. Cheryl wanted no part of it. It was poisoned by lies she could never clean out. The fallout hit Tyler hard. His business took a nosedive. Clients pulled out of contracts. Local hardware stores refused to give him credit. He walked into a diner one afternoon and was asked to leave before he even sat down. For a man who had always been respected, even admired, the sudden isolation was jarring. But instead of remorse or reflection, Tyler's bitterness began to grow. He blamed Cheryl for everything, the exposure, the shame, the collapse of his life. In his mind, she had stolen everything from him. He started leaving voicemails on Cheryl's phone, first begging, then threatening. At first she ignored them, then she started saving them. There was something in his voice she hadn't heard before, something dangerous. He sounded unhinged, as if he were living in an entirely different version of reality. Cheryl turned over everything she had to her lawyer and law enforcement, but there wasn't much they could do at that point. Tyler hadn't broken any laws with his voicemails, at least not yet. The restraining order helped, but it didn't erase the fear growing in Cheryl's chest every time her phone buzzed. She knew he was unraveling. She just didn't know how far he would fall. Then there was Lena. She vanished entirely. Some said she went to live with a cousin in Florida. Others believed she had checked into a psychiatric hospital. Cheryl didn't care where she went. She only hoped she stayed far away. In some ways, Lena was the match that lit the fire. But Tyler was the fuel, soaked deep in years of buried secrets. Now, with his carefully built world in ruins, he was starting to think there was only one way to take back control. Cheryl, meanwhile, continued to document everything. Every message, every incident, every conversation she had with lawyers or law enforcement. She no longer hoped for peace. She prepared for war, and in the back of her mind, she couldn't shake the thought that something terrible was coming. She had seen it in his eyes the last time they spoke in court. Cold, hard, and empty. It was the look of a man with nothing left to lose. The night was still and heavy, the kind of oppressive Alabama heat that made the air feel thick even after the sun went down. Pine Hollow was quiet, the hum of crickets the only sound outside most windows. It was just past 3:00 a.m. when the first neighbor saw the flames. At first it was just a faint orange glow beyond the tree line. Then came the sound of glass breaking, followed by the roar of fire as it devoured the back end of Cheryl's modest 2-story house. Within minutes, the entire rear portion was engulfed. By the time firefighters arrived, smoke was billowing from every window, and the roof above the kitchen had already collapsed inward. Inside, Cheryl's lifeless body was found lying face down on the tile floor. She had been stabbed multiple times, wounds to her chest, back, and neck, long before the fire reached her. The coroner would later determine that she had died quickly but violently and not from smoke inhalation as initially assumed. There was no sign of forced entry, no sign of struggle beyond the immediate area around the kitchen. Her children, thank God, were spending the weekend at Cheryl's sister's house. Had they been home, the tragedy could have been even more unthinkable. The fire was initially believed to be accidental, wiring or a kitchen appliance maybe, but once investigators discovered the stab wounds, the scene shifted from tragic to criminal, arson and homicide. A search began immediately for Tyler Whitman, who hadn't been seen in over 24 hours. His phone had been turned off, and he hadn't shown up for a scheduled court mediation regarding custody arrangements. It didn't take long for suspicion to fall squarely on him. A warrant was issued by sunrise. Tyler was found just after noon the next day, hiding in a rundown trailer parked behind a former client's property 2 counties away. He had no weapons on him and didn't resist arrest. When questioned, he confessed almost immediately. His voice was calm, cold, almost robotic. He said Cheryl had taken everything from him: his family, his business, his dignity. He said she didn't just expose the truth, she used it as a weapon, and that he had to silence the betrayal. Investigators pieced together the timeline quickly. Tyler had watched Cheryl for days, learning her patterns, confirming that the children wouldn't be home that weekend. He broke in through the back door with a spare key he had never returned, waited in the dark, and ambushed her in the kitchen. After the attack, he poured gasoline from a container he had hidden in the garage and set fire to the house, hoping it would erase the evidence, but Cheryl had installed security cameras weeks earlier. Small, discreet ones tucked into corners of the living room and hallway. The footage captured his entry, the attack, and even a faint outline of his face as the flames began to rise. Lena was brought in for questioning soon after Tyler's arrest. She denied knowing anything about his plan. But detectives found troubling text messages between them, messages where Lena had expressed her hatred for Cheryl and encouraged Tyler to finally fix it. While there was no direct evidence tying her to the murder itself, public opinion didn't need a trial to find her guilty. Lena left town within a week, her car spotted heading south through Georgia. She was never seen in Pine Hollow again. Back at the smoldering remains of Cheryl's home, a crew of investigators combed through the ashes. What they found shocked even the most seasoned detectives. 2 safes, protected by fire-resistant casings, tucked behind a false panel in the bedroom closet. Inside were folders neatly labeled with photos, documents, and logs. Cheryl had kept records of everything: Tyler's movements, Lena's social media posts, banking statements, and even notarized letters detailing her fear that Tyler might harm her. She had prepared for the worst. She just hadn't been able to stop it. And the truth that once started as a private discovery had now led to a horrifying, irreversible end. The courtroom was packed on the day Tyler Whitman stood trial for the murder of his wife. Journalists, neighbors, former clients, and churchgoers all sat shoulder to shoulder, waiting to witness the fall of the man they once held in such high regard. He entered in handcuffs, wearing an orange jumpsuit and a blank expression that never changed, not once throughout the proceedings. The evidence was overwhelming. The security footage showed his entry into the home. Forensic experts confirmed the knife wounds. Gasoline residue was found on his clothing. The motive, while shocking, was clear: revenge born from humiliation and the collapse of the twisted life he had built in secret. The prosecution painted a chilling portrait of a man who had grown so consumed by shame and rage that he murdered the woman who exposed his secrets. They detailed how Tyler meticulously planned the attack, waited for the children to be away, and used his knowledge of the house to carry out the killing without hesitation. The defense, unable to deny the facts, leaned on emotional instability. They claimed Tyler had suffered a mental breakdown, that years of childhood trauma and repressed guilt had exploded into a tragic act of madness. But it didn't matter. The jury deliberated for just 5 hours before returning with a verdict: guilty on all counts, first-degree murder, arson, tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The town of Pine Hollow reeled from the verdict, but for many the trial brought a strange sense of closure. The man responsible for the horror that had shattered their small community was now behind bars. But even after the sentencing, one final twist would send ripples through what remained of Cheryl's family and the town at large. It began with a phone call from the storage facility 2 towns over. The owner had recognized Cheryl's name from the news and remembered a unit she had rented under her maiden name. It had gone unnoticed during the investigation because she had opened it under a separate address and billing account. The police obtained a warrant and opened the unit with a locksmith present. Inside was a carefully packed collection of boxes labeled in Cheryl's handwriting. They were filled with years' worth of documents, letters, photographs, and digital drives. Among the items was a manila envelope marked "For my attorney." Inside were DNA results, court filing drafts, and a sworn affidavit Cheryl had written just months before her death. The most explosive piece was the DNA test, which confirmed what Cheryl had only suspected when she first found the phone. Lena's child, a 6-year-old boy, was biologically Tyler's son. He had fathered a child with his half-sister. The discovery shocked investigators and renewed public outrage. What had once seemed like a horrifying affair was now confirmed to be something even more disturbing, a decades-long deception that had led to incest, betrayal, and murder. Cheryl had planned to use the documents not only in the divorce and custody hearings but also to petition the court for guardianship of Lena's child, fearing the boy would grow up in the same toxic dynamic that had fueled the tragedy. It became clear that Cheryl hadn't just been gathering evidence for revenge. She had been trying to protect others, even a child that wasn't hers, from the darkness she had uncovered. Tyler never responded to the new revelations. In prison, he remained silent, refusing interviews, refusing to speak even to his own legal team. Lena, too, disappeared from public view. Some say she changed her name and moved to another state. Others claim she tried to take her own life, though no official reports confirmed it. In Pine Hollow, people still talk about the case in hushed voices, unable to forget the nightmare that unfolded behind the Whitmans' white picket fence. Cheryl Whitman had once been known as a devoted wife and loving mother, but in the end she became something more. A woman who uncovered a truth no one was willing to face, and who gave everything, even her life, to bring it into the light.